In the shadowed valleys of the Castori Pack territory, Ren had always been the Omega nobody wanted. She was born frail, slow to shift, and lacking the sharp senses that marked a true Omega's worth in the eyes of her people. For 19 years she had grown used to the whispers that followed her through the village, the way people stepped around her, as though her weakness might be contagious, and the quiet, constant reminder that she did not belong. Her mother had once told her that some wolves were simply born to struggle, and that Ren should learn to expect less from life than others did. At the time, Ren had believed her. She had spent years trying to shrink herself, to take up less space, to apologize for existing before anyone even asked her to. The morning she was cast out was cold enough to sting. Frost coated the ground, and her breath came out in pale clouds as the pack elders read the decision aloud in front of the whole village. They called her a burden on their resources, someone who gave nothing back to the pack that had fed and sheltered her. Nobody argued, not even her mother, who stood at the edge of the crowd and did not lift her eyes as Ren was marched to the border. She was given a worn cloak and a single warning: never come back. Ren walked for 3 days through forest and field, surviving on what little she could find, her strength fading with every mile. On the third night, exhausted and freezing, she collapsed near the edge of unfamiliar territory, certain she would not wake again. She was wrong. The land she had stumbled onto belonged to Alpha King Draven Ashcroft, ruler of the most powerful pack in the northern wilds. His reputation was fearsome. People spoke of him as a leader who valued strength above all else, a king with little patience for anything that could not prove its worth. It was not kindness that led his scouts to find her. It was something else entirely. One of his trackers caught a strange scent drifting from her skin, faint but unmistakable, a metallic sweetness that did not match the scent of any ordinary Omega. He could not explain why, but something told him to bring her in rather than leave her to the cold. Draven had far greater troubles than a half-frozen stranger. His pack was dying, not from war or attack, but from a slow and terrible sickness that had spread through contaminated water sources upstream. Wolves who had once been strong grew weak within days, their bodies wasting from the inside. His finest healers had run out of answers. 3 pack members had already died, including his own younger sister, and grief hung over the territory like a fog that refused to lift. He allowed his healers to examine the stranger only because his second-in-command, a steady and observant wolf named Kale, insisted that something about her scent felt important, even if he could not say why. What the healers discovered changed everything. Hidden within Ren's blood was a rare ancestral marker, a bloodline the healers had only ever read about in old medical records, one believed to have vanished 3 generations earlier. This bloodline was known, according to the oldest texts, for producing a natural resistance to exactly the kind of poison that was destroying Draven's pack. The Omega everyone had dismissed as weak was, in truth, one of the rarest wolves alive. Draven did not tell her this right away. Instead, he watched her. He watched the way she flinched whenever someone raised their voice nearby, a small, practiced motion that spoke of years of harsh treatment. He watched her sit quietly at the edge of a room, as though she expected to be told to leave at any moment. He watched her, without being asked, spend an entire night caring for a sick pup that no one else had time for, gently humming until the child finally slept. He also watched her stand her ground when a careless beta mocked the scars on her arms. She did not cower. She looked him in the eye and told him that scars were proof of surviving, not weakness, before walking away with her head held high. That small moment stayed with Draven longer than he expected. When he finally sat her down and explained what her blood could do, Ren felt her chest tighten with an old, familiar fear. She assumed this was simply another version of what she had always been to her former pack, a tool to be used and then discarded once she had served her purpose. She had learned not to expect anything more than that. Still, she agreed without hesitation. If her blood could save lives, she told him quietly, then it did not matter what happened to her afterward. Saving others mattered more than being valued herself. Draven refused to accept that kind of thinking. He insisted on proper medical care during every donation, time for her to rest and recover fully between each one, and clear, honest communication about exactly what was happening to her body. He asked for her agreement before every single step, something Ren had never experienced in her life. In her old pack, an Omega's body was not considered something that required permission. At first, she did not know what to do with this kind of treatment. She waited for the catch, the moment when kindness would turn into control, because that was the pattern she had always known. But the moment never came. Draven's healers were patient. His pack began to view her with something new, an emotion Ren had never been shown before: gratitude. As the days passed, sick wolves who had been confined to their beds began to walk again. Children who had grown pale and thin started laughing in the courtyards. Draven's own younger cousin, who had been so weak she could barely lift her head, sat up one morning and asked for food, startling the healers who had feared the worst. Word spread quickly through the territory. The stranger who had once been left to die in the snow was the reason their families were alive. Ren struggled to accept this new version of herself. For so long she had believed the story her old pack told about her, that she was fragile, useless, a mistake the world had made. Now she was surrounded by wolves who thanked her by name, who greeted her with warmth instead of pity, who treated her presence as a gift rather than a burden. Draven found himself drawn to her in ways that had nothing to do with her blood. He began finding reasons to be near her, asking about small things, her favorite foods, the stories she had grown up with, the dreams she once had before life taught her to stop dreaming. He was careful never to make her feel like an obligation. He simply wanted to know her, the real her, the woman behind the fear she still carried. Slowly, Ren allowed herself to open up. She told him about the years of being overlooked, the birthdays no one remembered, the nights she had gone hungry so someone else in her old pack could eat first. She told him about the loneliness that had followed her since childhood, a loneliness so constant she had almost stopped noticing it. Draven listened to every word without interrupting, his jaw tightening with quiet anger at a pack that had thrown away someone so clearly worth protecting. He never once made her feel foolish for trusting people who did not deserve her trust. Instead, he simply promised that as long as she stayed in his territory, she would never again be made to feel unwanted. For the first time in her life, Ren began to believe someone meant what they said. As the sickness in the pack faded and strength returned to its people, Draven made a decision that surprised even his closest advisors. He announced that Ren would remain under his protection permanently, not as a healer to be called upon whenever needed, but as a member of his household with full rights and respect. Some of the older wolves in his court raised their eyebrows at this, unused to seeing an Omega treated with such honor. Draven made it clear, in a calm but firm voice, that anyone who had a problem with his decision could bring it to him directly. No one did. Word of Ren's importance eventually reached her former pack. When they learned of her rare bloodline and the role she had played in saving an entire territory, greed overcame whatever guilt they might have felt. A small group from her old pack arrived at the border, demanding that she return with them, claiming she still belonged to their village and that her gifts should benefit her true pack first. Draven met them at the border himself, Ren standing calmly beside him. He told them plainly that Ren belonged to no one but herself, and that if they wished to discuss any claim over her, they would need to explain first why they had left a starving, freezing young woman to die alone in the snow. His voice remained level, but there was a warning beneath it that no one dared test. The group from her old pack exchanged uneasy glances. One of them tried to argue that decisions made by the elders were not something outsiders could question. Draven simply asked whether saving lives with her blood counted as an outsider's business, since it was Ren's compassion, not their loyalty, that had kept his people alive. They had no answer for that. They left without her, and this time, Ren did not feel the fear she once might have. She felt something new settle inside her chest, a quiet strength that had nothing to do with being rescued, and everything to do with finally being seen for who she truly was. In the months that followed, Ren became more than just the woman who had saved the Castori pack from disaster. She became someone people sought out, not out of obligation, but because her presence brought comfort. She trained gently with the healers, learning how her gift worked so she could better understand her own body. She spent afternoons with the pups she had once cared for during the worst of the sickness, watching them grow stronger with each passing week. Draven, once known only for his fierce reputation, found himself gentler in her presence, though no less protective. He made sure the entire pack understood that Ren's worth had never depended on her blood. Her strength had always been there, hidden beneath years of unkindness, waiting for someone to finally notice it. When he eventually asked her to be his mate, it was not a grand announcement made for the benefit of onlookers. It was a quiet moment beneath the evening sky, where he told her that he was not asking because of what she had given his pack, but because of who she had shown herself to be through all of it. He told her that her patience, her courage, and her ability to care for others, despite everything she had endured, were the things he admired most. Ren, who had once believed she would spend her life being tolerated at best, found herself surrounded by a pack that celebrated her, a king who cherished her, and a home she never thought she would find. The pack that had once called her worthless, now called her their queen. And every time someone told the story of how she came to them, half frozen and forgotten by her own family, Draven made sure to add one final detail before the tale ended. She had never been weak. She had simply never been given a home worth staying for. Now, at last, she had one.